Salutations, every pup, and welcome to Chapter 19 of Ignore the Dementor by NinjaPandaScholar. As always, the link to the fic will be in the description below. And with that out of the way, let's jump on into it. Chapter 19 Truant Dementors. Harry felt like he was hovering in his Dementor form even though he was in Jamie the next day. He was so happy. His maybe date had gone so well with Luna that he was certain they'd do it again. Also, he was able to get a bit of a snack since everyone was so happy about the Hogsmeade weekend. So, all in all, that Saturday had been great. Sunday, he was able to get together a pickup Quidditch game with most of the old Gryffindor team as well as some younger years and a few random Hufflepuffs. Even though Quidditch was still on hold, a pickup game was, so far, not against the new educational decrees. Everyone was certain that it would have been by now if Umbridge were still around. Harry's team won by a small margin since most of who he had were the younger years that just didn't know how to fly well yet. They still won though, since Harry really couldn't lose sight of the snitch anymore, and the little ones were happy. This was nothing to the fact that Luna sat with Harry at lunch though. However, he was angry because she told him she was missing several pairs of shoes that the Nargles had taken. Harry knew just who the Nargles were and planned to make their week miserable. Now that the mood of the students was steadily rising, he'd recently started in on the house elf list of retribution, what he called it in his head anyway, and added in the Ravenclaw fourth year's girls' names again. They were already on the list once. He had a lot of names to get through and bad days to cause, and some on the list he got a lot of glee in enacting house elf vengeance on. After lunch, Harry ran directly into Ron, who'd stopped in a dead halt in the entrance hall. "Oof, sorry," Harry apologized as he looked around his taller friend to see what caused the surprise. "Uh-oh," Ron muttered with dread. "You can say that again," Harry added, but with glee in his voice. Drake and Ronnie were standing by the doors to the castle, flanked on either side by a witch and a wizard in aura robes. Scrimgeour was hurrying over to them in a dignified way from the Great Hall. "May I ask what's going on here?" He ignored the two Dementors in disguise to ask the Aurors. Ronnie grinned and gave Ron a little way from where he was standing, earning himself a glare from Drake. We found these two students wandering Diagon Alley this morning," the Witch Auror informed the High Inquisitor with much deference. "They must have snuck away during your Hogsmeade weekend." "They were carrying Gryffindor robes." The Wizard Auror handed a rucksack back to Drake, who looked extremely irritated that they'd been rounded up on their mission as truant students. "What do you two have to say for yourselves?" Scrimgeour admonished them. "This is beyond a breach of school rules and immensely dangerous." Harry guessed they were both holding in eye rolls at that. "We're sorry, sir," Drake began. It was pretty clear he had no clue who this wizard was he was talking to. "I promise it will never happen again." Harry valiantly held a snort of laughter back at that one. "They're in so much trouble," Hermione mumbled behind him. Hermione, you do recognize them, right?" Ron asked, with a surprised head tilt, since she had been at breakfast with them when they first met the two Dementors. "They look familiar. Are they the Dementors?" she gasped, in a low tone, as who they were finally sunk in. "Duh," Ron chuckled. Hermione was much better at books than people. "It doesn't matter how much trouble they get in. It's not like they plan to hang around." "The bodies should be about to disintegrate to fall off of whatever golems do as well," Harry remarked in a whisper. The scene by the door continued with a long lecture from Scrimgeour and threats of expulsion and a promise to write their parents, who they said very proudly were Athena and King Smith, who lived in the Caribbean. "We're obviously adopted," Drake remarked with an eye roll this time as the Aurors looked between the dark-skinned and Asian teen. "I want both of you confined to your dorm for the rest of the day and to meet with your head of house as soon as classes are over tomorrow for punishment," the headmaster growled, obviously thinking dealing with them wasn't worth his time. I bet McGonagall will notice they aren't her students," Ron snickered. "I wonder what she'll do." "Well, we have to show them to the tower now. We can handle that tomorrow." Harry grinned as he skipped after the two Dementors who just wandered off, not knowing where the tower was when they were dismissed. "Oh, thank goodness," Drake breathed out when the trio caught up to them. "I was wondering if we just have to wander around all day looking for that stupid tower." "How by Merlin's frilly patriv did you two get caught for truancy?" Harry laughed as he slung an arm around Drake's shoulder and steered him more in the direction of Gryffindor Tower. "We were hot on the trail of Rodolphus Lestrange, who had apparently visited Gringotts earlier today," Ronnie explained excitedly. "We only have him and Bellatrix Lestrange left, and we think they're holed up at the manor owned by Lucius Malfoy. It's under some ridiculous wards, though, so even we can't find it. I'm sure we could get in if we found it, but locating the place is a problem." "Wait, there are 10 escaped Death Eaters, and only 3 have shown up soulless at the door of the Ministry," Hermione questioned. Drake shrugged. "We portkeyed the rest to the maximum security wing in the Caribbean. The wizards there made a whole bag of portkeys. According to them, only Dullahove, Rookwood, and all the Lestranges were determined to be too volatile to deal with keeping around. We decided to keep the rest for snacks with the other prisoners. They were all sentenced to life in prison anyway. It really doesn't matter where they serve it at. And they keep our food numbers up overall. Our golems are going to play out in a day or two, so we can't use them as disguises to be in the middle of Diagon now. We could go invisible, but it's a lot easier to sneak up on someone and convince them to come willingly when you look like a young lost Hogwarts student," Ronnie said with the most innocent eyes. "Anyway, we're doing our innocent lost student routine and ran into Aurors instead of our quarry." I doubt any Lestrange would help you," Ron snorted in humor at his namesake's antics. "They don't have to help. They just have to let their guard down. Then we eat them," Ronnie grinned back. "I promised Ronnie he could visit Harry, so I guess this is as good of a time as any," Drake huffed out with a long-suffering sigh. "All right!" The younger Dementor pumped the air with his fist. "We aren't attending any classes, though," Drake warned. "I don't need to get to know my food that well." Ronnie pouted, but didn't complain. "Invictus," Harry told the portrait as they approached the tower. "We'll get you set up in our dorm. You can pile your golems together on my bed tonight if they need to rest, and I'll leave Jamie with Neville." "I think Jamie is becoming more Neville's pet than yours, mate," Ron remarked as he had caught the elf leaving Harry's bed in the morning again. Harry just shrugged. "He makes a pretty good teddy bear, apparently." "We'll leave after everyone goes to sleep," Drake explained. "Our golems don't need to rest, and we'll get the last bits of use out of them as possible tomorrow, before they fall apart." "Whatever. Do you know how to play wizard's chess?" Ron asked Ronnie as the two Dementors took in the room with a bit of a grimace at the aura and colors. I'll warn you, I'm pretty good, though," the Dementor smiled happily once he got used to the room. "You're on!" Drake and Ronnie settled in quickly to Gryffindor Tower. Hermione explained to everyone who would listen that they were prospective students who were thinking about transferring in and were staying in the dorm for the night. This caused a large portion of the Gryffindors to try to tell them anything and everything about Hogwarts, which Ronnie loved and made Drake annoyed. They were both settled in and playing wizard's chess with Ron and Hermione, having shown them both a version where you could get 4 people in a game when Harry realized he needed to leave for his meeting with Dumbledore. "Hey guys, I'm off for that thing," he remarked cryptically to Ron and Hermione. "Yeah, whatever," Ron waved him off as he was absorbed in strategizing his next move. "Be safe," Hermione added in with a quick smile. "Be good," Harry warned both Dementors with a glare. Ronnie turned the puppy dog eyes on again. "Who? Us?" "Just don't eat anyone." Harry rolled his eyes and laughed, leaving the group by the fire. Luckily, it was before curfew, and Harry didn't run into anyone as he rushed down to the dungeons. "Aconite!" he exclaimed to the portrait before excitedly jumping into Snape's quarters. "Harry!" Sirius crowed as he jumped up and grabbed Harry into a hug. "I just saw you at lunch," Harry muttered from where he was crushed into his godfather's shoulder. He's been insufferable about you going tonight. Snape grumbled from the kitchen table where he was nursing a cup of tea. We keep telling him that you're indestructible, but he just won't listen. I don't see why you have to go at night. You can't see the danger as easily. Sirius huffed from where he was still holding Harry. My pup might be injured. Siri, I'm a Dementor. The teen chuckled and squeezed the man back comfortingly. I don't have eyes. I can see just as well in the dark as I can in the light. Actually, better. I'll leave Jamie here if it makes you feel better. Yes, my boy. That's just what I was going to suggest. Dumbledore put an arm around Sirius's shoulder after he let go of Harry. Surprisingly, the former headmaster was wearing a subdued blue robes for once. Going incognito? Harry asked with a motion to the robes. You just keep reading my mind tonight, Harry. The elderly man chuckled, while Sirius tried to escape his hold. Potter, if you can lose Albus somewhere along the way, I would greatly appreciate it, Snape added, looking at his wits' end with his house guests. Why don't you take the mutt with you as well? Harry smiled deviously and turned to Albus. You hear that, sir? He wants me back. He didn't tell me to get lost. I think I'm growing on him. Like a fungus. Snape grumbled and poured something into his tea that definitely wasn't tea and was clearly alcoholic. Here, leave Jamie with me. I'll take care of him, Sirius offered, moving a throw pillow off the couch. Okay, but don't draw a mustache on me or anything. Harry looked at the offer suspiciously as he sat on the couch. Sirius took a few steps back as Harry rose from his body as a Dementor. Blimey, I'll never get used to that. The former prisoner shuddered. Dumbledore smiled broadly. All right, my boy. Grab my arm, and I'm going to apparate us to a little village where Tom Riddle's family used to live. I've manipulated the wards to let us out on this occasion. The Dementor hovered over to the man and gripped his arm with a skeletal hand. Listen to Dumbledore! Be safe! Sirius called out as they popped from the room. The shack was filthy, obviously rat-infested, and oozing black magic, as Harry looked around in interest. It wasn't that bad. He could see making it a summer home. It just needed a few holes in the roof fixed, a bit of cleaning, and some new flooring. The ring that Dumbledore levitated out of a hole under a loose floorboard Now that had some problems, though. He might not have been a fairy, but he guessed even a muggle could see the evil aura surrounding the thing. It was just waiting to kill someone. Harry saw what was coming with both surprise and a bit of resignation. The dark curse bled off the ring, infecting the air around it. It was the darkest soul piece and the darkest curse he'd seen yet. Dumbledore's hand was inching towards the ring. It had to have some kind of compulsion charm. Or why else would the man stupidly decide to try on a cursed ring? Stop! Harry yelled frantically. But even if the sentiment translated, the words didn't, and Dumbledore was beyond listening anyway. Harry frantically looked around for something, anything, to help him stop what was about to happen. The shack was just dirt, rubble, and spiders, though. He took in a deep, rattling breath and made a decision. All this happened in less than a second, but Dumbledore was already very close to making the worst mistake of his life. So, as quickly as possible, Harry reached out and metaphorically gave the man's soul a harsh jerk. Harry gathered all the emotions, good, bad, and petty, from the man in front of him, and basically took a huge bite out of them. No human could withstand the complete emotional shutdown this caused. Or at least Harry hoped that was the case. Thankfully, the elderly man instantly crumpled to the ground, dropping the ring onto the floor in the process. Sorry, Harry mumbled as he crouched over the man to check on him. Dumbledore was completely unconscious, but also slightly shaking in all his limbs. He was going to have the worst Dementor exposure hangover of anyone not a prisoner. Harry winced at how bad this was going to be, but he also didn't feel guilty at all. If the man was going to do something as stupid as giving in to a compulsion charm that would probably have killed him, then he could deal with the exposure hangover later. Looking at the supposedly innocent ring on the floor, Harry almost growled at it. Actually, Yes, he did in fact growl, and he wasn't even ashamed about that. Whatever Voldemort had done to this Horcrux was just vile. Not that they all weren't vile, but this one oozed evil. First things first, Harry knelt down on the floor and went ahead and separated the soul from the ring and pulled it into his body. It took Harry a few minutes as the deliciousness of the soul was almost intoxicating. His stomach felt warm and happy as the chocolatey spiciness of what he'd come to recognize as Voldemort's soul was devoured. Once he came out of his food coma a bit, he turned to handle whatever terrible curse was surrounding the ring. Now, Harry was smarter than people who seemed to give him credit for, but he was still only a fifth year. There was no way he was going to be able to figure out how to break a dark curse that even Dumbledore didn't seem to have recognized. Plus, he didn't currently have a wand or a wizard's magical core. What he did have was magic-resistant Dementor skin, though. It was a calculated risk, but he was almost positive that he'd be immune, especially since he was one of the only beings on the planet immune to a killing curse. This couldn't be worse than that. With a shrug of "what the hell," Harry slipped the ring onto his skeletal finger. It was with a vicious smile that he saw the curse unraveling and dissipating from the ring. He wished Luna was there to see it, as she could have told what was happening more with the magic. But to Harry, the darkness and the evil was slowly seeming to be eaten away as it touched his skin. When the curse was finally completely gone, Harry turned back to the problem at hand, namely Dumbledore. "You are my ride," he grumbled down at the still unconscious man. Even if he woke up, he'd be in no mental state to apparate them, and Harry neither knew how to apparate nor could he use a wand at the moment. He could fly them both back to Hogwarts, but that would take a while, and as irritated as he was currently at Dumbledore, he was still very concerned about what he'd done to the man. Harry was sure he'd be fine with the calming draught and copious amounts of chocolate, but he was still worried and wanted to get him back as quickly as possible. Grimacing, Harry knew what he had to do, but he also knew it was going to come with a lot of questions and mothering. "Winky!" he called out. He would have called for Dobby, but that was just asking for more lectures from Winky later, not having called for her first. With a loud pop, Winky appeared. She looked around and sighed dramatically. "What did Headmaster Dumbledore do this time?" she asked in resignation. "Does this one at least still have a soul?" "Yes, he still has a soul," Harry huffed with a pout never before seen from a Dementor. "I had to save his oss from getting cursed." "Ah, that's all right then," Winky nodded, like really either option would have been fine with her. "Winky, I can't apparate, and the headmaster was my way back to the castle. Do you think you could—" Harry looked at her hopefully. "Both yous?" she asked, with a questioning look to the unconscious man. "If it's not too much trouble." Harry grinned, knowing she was going to agree. "Fine. I assume you want to be left in the Potion Master's rooms?" the elf asked as she took Harry's hand in a fistful of Dumbledore's robes. "If we must," the Dementor sighed, before they all popped out of existence. "You didn't eat Albus, did you?" Snape gaped at them when Winky, Harry, and Dumbledore appeared between where he was sitting in the armchair and Sirius was on the couch. "I said to leave him somewhere, not eat him." "No, not that he was any help anyway. The idiot tried to put it on a cursed ring that I'm positive would have killed him, and you all thought I'd be the liability. I should have just left his unconscious arse at the shack to make his way back to teach him a lesson." He grumbled to Winky with a head motion requesting. Winky turned to the other men. "He says no." "Dobby is a much better translator." Harry shook his head with a mischievous grin at the elf. Winky waved her hand, and a stinging hex hit Harry. He grinned again. "Dementiskin," he chuckled, as he didn't feel more than a tickle. "Just get back in Mr. Jamie before I push your hovering butt into a wall." Winky narrowed her eyes at him, but with a playful gleam in them. Snape and Sirius looked horrified at the Dementor version of laughing. Dying man's gasping breaths. As Harry moved over to sink back into Jamie on the couch beside Sirius. "Pup, I'm very lost as to what just happened, but what's wrong with Dumbledore? And was that what a Dementor sounds like laughing? Harry looked down at his human's hand to see the ring had appeared on Jamie's finger when he joined body. That's brilliant, he remarked with magic. It must still have in it after the curses broke. If he shined it up a bit, it would catch the light nicely. Oh, he looked at the nervous-looking man, coming back to the conversation. I just jiggled his soul a bit to stop him from putting the ring on and cursing himself. It was clearly a cursed object. I mean, seriously! He shook his head with an eye roll now that he had his eyes again. What does jiggling a soul mean? Snape asked, with a raise of his eyebrows that almost took it completely to his hairline. Harry got more comfortable on the couch. It's like an extra strong dose of the Dementor aura. In order, I guess you will need a calming draught to be enervated and a whole bunch of chocolate. Snape sighed but stood to get the calming draught and tend to his employer. Was the trip at least a success? Yes, I felt directly into the man's system. Oh, yeah! Harry held up his hand. I think I'll keep this one too, if no one objects. I don't want it. Sirius shook his head, but leaned over to look at the ring better. And that of it. The vampire cast. Dumbledore groaned and slowly opened his eyes. Why do I feel like jumping off the astronomy tower would be a good idea, and nothing matters in life anymore? He gasped out from where he was still lying prone on the floor. Sorry, sir. Harry winced. I had to take a pretty big bite to keep you from putting on the ring. It's probably best if Sirius and Professor Snape keep an eye on you for a while. Thank you, he sighed out in relief before slowly sitting up. He took the chocolate bar Snape handed him next. Thank you too, my boy. Winky will get some hot chocolate, the elf said before popping out. What happened after I collapsed? Dumbledore asked after taking a bite of the chocolate. Oh, I ate the soul. It was delightful, by the way, and I cleansed the ring by putting it on. Can I keep it, sir? Harry asked hopefully, showing the man the ring on his finger. Albus chuckled and shook his head. I guess I was the one we should have been worried about instead of you, he remarked. Of course, you may keep it, Harry. You deserve it. Though I would ask that you let me study the stone at some point in the future. Sure, Harry shrugged and stood with a smile on his face. Now, I left two Dementors in Gryffindor Tower, so I should probably head back to say goodbye before they head out to try to eat Bellatrix. You what? Snape actually dropped the empty potion vial he was holding. Luckily, it was spelled unbreakable. Yeah, Ronnie and Drake got caught by the auras in the teenage golems the Caribbean wizards made for them. They returned them to the school thinking they'd skipped out over the Hogsmeade weekend. Harry explained as he extricated himself from another serious hug. Some days I'm glad I'm not currently the headmaster. Dumbledore turned to a gaping Snape with a smile. Make sure they leave before classes start, was the only thing the potions professor master could get out past his surprise. Will do. See you all tomorrow. Harry waved as he left them all to their own devices. It was never a good thing when the Weasley twins entered the common room in a good mood. Something must have gone very wrong for someone else in the castle. That was exactly what happened a couple weeks after Ronnie and Drake's visit, though. What has the two of you looking so smug? Ron asked his brother suspiciously. Frankly, suspicion was probably an undercurrent to every conversation he had with the twins. And it's after curfew, Hermione added on at the end in a scolding tone. We were setting up a prank on the first floor to get the Slytherins and Hufflepuffs as they came back up from the dungeons for breakfast. George started. It was coming along swimming, probably Fred continued. Yeah, until an inquisitorial squad snitch showed up, the other twin finished. Harry had a bad feeling about what might have happened to the inquisitorial squad member. Why would that have you looking smug? He asked, really hoping that Malfoy or Montague hadn't run afoul with the twins on one of their pranking sprees. They really could be quite ruthless. Oh, well, we escaped without points of detention. The twin, probably George, grinned mischievously. Yeah, that's Slytherin. Montague was the one that caught us. Probably wanting to seek revenge for us creaming in them in Quidditch back when it was happening. Or just being a Slytherin, Fred ended as they both nodded. Harry's bad feeling was growing to one of concern and anger at this point. May I ask did may I ask did you do to Montague? He asked, barely holding back his anger. Hermione looked at him questioningly, as she would normally be the one leading into a lecture on the twins instead of Harry. We threw him headfirst into that vanishing cabinet on the first floor before he was able to say anything, Fred said with an unrepentant grin. Hermione opened her mouth to berate him, but Harry beat her to it. That vanishing cabinet is broken! Everyone knows that. What happened to him when he went into it? Don't know. He could have gone anywhere. George shrugged, still not looking like he cared at all. Harry stood as the room immediately dropped 10 degrees colder. You don't know? You could have killed him! You could have murdered one of your fellow students! That cabinet is broken! Anything could have happened to him! Chill, Harry. The professors wouldn't have left out anything that was actually dangerous. Fred rolled his eyes, still not catching on to how much danger they were currently in. Ron and Hermione, however, were looking at Harry in extreme worry. Harry took a deep, steadying breath, but it didn't do anything for his anger. Frankly, he was getting angrier by the minute. Need I remind you of the Sorcerer's Stone, the Cerberus, the Basilisk in the Pipes, the Acromantulas, the Murderous Willow Tree, the Dementors on the grounds, the Blast-Ended Scroots, the Dragons, Umbridge? Need I continue? Harry ground out between clenched teeth. They sure as hell would leave out something that could kill a student. What? No, George protested, but now looking worried. The temperature dropped rapidly again as all the shivering students started looking around in confusion. Harry, calm down. Hermione quietly tried to pull him back. No! These two imbeciles might have killed my friend, and you tell me to calm down? Harry's aura visibly darkened as he took a step forward and towards the twins. On some level, Harry acknowledged that, as a gargoyle, Montague was probably much harder to kill and more resilient than a normal human, but that didn't mean that whatever was wrong with that cabinet wouldn't hurt him. The magic could be scary at times, especially when things went wrong. You're friends with Montague? Fred gulped and unconsciously took a step back. You will pay. He took one more step forward before both twins collapsed at his feet in a dead heap. Harry blinked a couple times in confusion as he took in Neville standing behind where the twins had been moments before with his hands outstretched. He'd obviously just had his hands on the back of both of their necks. We don't have time for this, Harry, Neville chastised him as he pulled a faintly glowing galleon from his pocket. It only says first floor. It's not more specific than that. Is that a DA galleon? Ron asked in confusion. No, that's one of the other ones I charmed for Harry, Hermione answered as she recognized the spells she had placed on it. Stay here, Neville instructed the other two as Harry rushed towards the portrait and held it open for Neville. There's no way in hell we're staying, Ron protested as he made to push past Neville. The high elf rolled his eyes and grabbed onto both teens' wrists, causing them to collapse right where they were standing in a heap on top of Fred and George. We really don't have time for this, he grumbled. Get a move on, he ordered as the second year jumped and rushed out the portrait door that Harry was still holding open. All the other Gryffindors just stared at the pile of unconscious students in surprise and confusion, wondering who should attempt to wake them up and what it was they had done to draw the wrath of the normally very peaceful Neville Longbottom. You know, you can be a bit scary, the Dementor grinned at the elf as they hurried out the door and through the hallways. Neville snorted. There's a reason a lot of high elves become healers. We have almost complete control over humans' bodily functions with our magic. We just have to touch them. I'd love to try it out on a Dementor at some point. Bring it on, Pat boy, Harry nervously chuckled, trying to calm a little of his anxiety over his missing friend. As the three of them ran through the hallways, they were met by Colin and Dennis, who must have been on their way to the Gryffindor Tower before the Ravenclaw HSMC members, with Matthew, who must have been with Sinistra on the Astronomy Tower, joined them, or the corridors intersected a couple flights down. Does anyone know what happened to Graham? Luna asked anxiously, as they waited for a staircase to move back to them. Weasley twins pushed him into that vanishing cabinet on the first floor, Harry growled out, still angrier than he had been since Umbridge. Merlin! Matthew exclaimed, in fear for their friend as the staircase finally made it to them, and they rushed forward once more. The Hufflepuff and Slytherin HSMC members were standing at the base of the stairway looking confused when they all reached the first floor. Does anyone know where he is? Malfoy asked, with more concern than Harry had ever seen on his face. Vanishing cabinet, Neville responded, as they all rushed down the hallway to get there. Professor Snape was already standing in front of the cabinet, probably having used a point-me charm to get there faster when his galleon had heated up. I cannot get it open, he informed the group of worried students. I tried every spell I can think of. I hear a thump occasionally, but I haven't been able to get him to talk to me. Give me a minute, Luna instructed them as she walked around the cabinet, examining the magic. This is a very complex device with many spells, some of which have been broken over the years. They don't intersect in the right order. Air and I have enough weapons on our persona between us that we could hack through the door, Kara offered with a wave towards the Gryffindor, who nodded. Everyone looked at them, trying to see where these invisible weapons were. No, the protection spell isn't broken. I doubt you could do much damage. Luna shook her head as she crouched down to look at the latch on the door. Colin and I both know a blood summoning ritual. It could pull him out of the cabinet? Dennis offered after a quick look around to make sure it was only the HSMC members in the hallway. As much as I really would be interested in seeing that, Snape responded with a surprised raise of his eyebrow. I don't think performing dark magic in the hallway while an aura is running around the school is the best idea. Well, I'm useless, Malfoy huffed in frustration. What good are creature powers when they don't help in emergency situations? I could try to make him feel better, but that's the extent of what I can do. Harry studied the blonde for a minute, still not being able to guess what he actually was. He wasn't really sure how he could help in this either. You know what we really need? Luna said as she stood up and turned around. What we really need is someone who can walk through walls. At that, she looked directly at Harry. Oh, yeah, that was how he could help. There isn't anything preventing it? He asked, just to check. He didn't really want to out himself to the entire club just yet, but there was no way he'd leave Montague in the closet. Nothing you couldn't break through. Luna shook her head as the other club members looked at him speculatively as he had looked at Malfoy a couple of seconds before. Harry shook his head, though. I can't bring him back out with me. What do I do when I'm on the other side of the door? The magic could transport you as it's supposed to, and the broken spells you can just walk through. I think you could pull Graham with you to whichever cabinet this one is connected to by breaking through the broken spells. If you really want to, you can just shrug them off, Luna explained. Harry wasn't sure what she meant. Luna, you have more faith in me than I do. I'm not sure how to do what you're talking about. Luna rolled her eyes. Be a Gryffindor and just force your way through. That's how you do it, she instructed. That does seem to be his forte. Snape smirked at the dark-haired teen. Fine, Harry rolled his eyes. Nev, you're in charge of Jamie, though. I want Luna to keep an eye on the cabinet, since she wouldn't know if anything went wrong. Who's Jamie? Malfoy asked, while everyone moved aside to give Harry more access to the cabinet. Later, Neville mumbled to him. You can send your Patronus when you get to the other side of the location, Brooke offered helpfully. Has anyone taught you the spell to turn it into a messenger? Harry just looked at her, not knowing how to respond to that beyond that it was impossible, since he couldn't use a wand in his other form. And, oh yeah, he's a Dementor! Montague knows how to send a Patronus, since you can no longer cast one, Snape offered with a nod. If he is up to it, that is. These coins will probably work fine if you can get the location spelled out specifically enough in the smallest space allowed for it. If I'm guessing correctly, you'll have to get Montague to do that as well, though. Harry nodded. The coins required a wand, too. Wait, you can't cast a Patronus anymore? Colin asked, with a look of disappointment on his face. Is that why you never taught us in DA? Man, I really wanted to learn that. No time for this, Neville huffed for what felt like the 1000th time. He immediately sat on the floor and crossed his legs. Harry, put Jamie here in my lap, and I'll make sure he's taken care of and not just left somewhere. Fine, just no one freak out, okay? Harry sighed as he laid down on the floor with his head in Neville's lap. This is so not how I wanted to do this. he groaned as he looked up at all the club members who were staring at him with identical looks of interest and expectation. Well, it was now or never. And that's a wrap on chapter 19. I hope you enjoyed. Please go show the original author, Ninja Panda Scholar, some love, and please leave me a comment. I love, love, love reading your comments. They make me so, so, so happy. And oh my god, that cliffhanger, right? Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. This is literally like one of my favorite chapters. I think next one tops this one though, because that's when they all find out he's a Dementor. Anyway, I just love it so much. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye, pups.